Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and I am going to be talking about Sharp Objects. Episode 7 is called Falling, so full spoilers for the episode. This was a big one. This was big. It had more of those tense scenes that are really cringe-inducing, where you're like sort of almost, almost seizing inside with the anticipation of the outcome that you know is coming. I am, of course, speaking about the scene where Camille's with John Keane in the motel room, and they end up having sex, and the entire time you know that the police are on their way. And I wasn't even sure that Willis was going to pop in, Richard. Like, I wasn't sure he was going to be there. That was like a kind of an added on surprise that made it even worse. But I knew Vickery was coming. I knew Chief Vickery was coming, and yeah, tension. Just like a bit like an awkward tension, not like a oh will she make it tension or someone going to die tension. Just a straight up awkward social tension of oh god. And then everything that followed from that scene, her lying there as they arrest John, even the line from Chief Vickery where he says, "Are you of age, son?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm 18, I'm 18." But the fact that he has to check that, it's like an extra little, as if she's not already like, awkward enough that she's been found with the suspect who's being arrested because they think they've got the evidence to put him away, because they've got blood of one of the victims in his place, or in his girlfriend's place, whatever place it was they searched, and. I mean, the chief even admits the testimony of the worker. Because what I said something wrong last week. I misremembered. It was the worker saw John Keane. Said he saw John Keane disposing of the bike. So just to correct that from last week, the comments did catch me on that very quickly. But everything after this with Richard specifically though was the real because obviously he has feelings for Camille. He's looking into her sister's death. He's very invested, and the way he closes the door as Vickery leaves with the suspect, and he's like, "Okay, where do we start?" And she tries to explain it, and he's very upset, and the entire thing, you understand both sides of this conversation. You understand her trying to defend it. But ultimately it gets to this really sad place where Camille is by far the most vulnerable we've ever seen her in this show, I think. She pleads for him not to leave her and not to hate her, and immediately tries to initiate a sexual act, and he of course pulls her up and says, "No, get up," and obviously you understand why he's hurt. You understand why he's affected by this. The shame from her is evident as well. The whole thing's really quite heartbreaking. Her desperate not to lose a connection and feeling like she's just messed it up. And he of course stings at the end as well. His final lines to her as he leaves about you're just a drunk and a slut. You blame your whole life on this one bad thing that happened to you, but that's all you really are. And the look in Amy Adams' face as he said that and left the scene, it was kind of heartbreaking. It's like it was a horrible thing to say, but you understand why he's this angry. I mean, it's the sort of thing where I'm pretty sure he's going to regret saying that later on. But in the scene, you feel what they're both feeling very, very heavily. It's a hard scene to watch. Maybe one of the most physically upsetting scenes to watch, and again, not because it's like a super tense dramatic thing. It's pure just character drama, but it works really well because he's clearly had feelings for her, maybe perhaps more than she has had with him. But I think the sad part here is that I think she did have feelings for him, and I think she was, getting closer and closer to actually letting him in some way. But then instead let John Keane into her life in a way that she'd never let Richard in yet. Because not only did he catch her in bed with them, he specifically she put on her top quickly as they were coming in, but when she got out of the bed to put on the rest of her clothes, he could see that she was naked in the scene. She was naked in their sex scene, and that's important because that's something that she specifically never did with him. So not only is she with someone else, and he felt like they were building a connection, and that's obviously hurtful for all the obvious reasons. He's extra hurt because she let John Keane close to her in a way that she never let him close. This was an intimacy that he never experienced with her. And he was trying desperately to kind of get because obviously during this episode he's investigating her sister's death, because he thinks something's fishy's going on, and Jacqueline obviously thought something fishy was going on, So, but that's part of what makes the scenes work so well is that not only is he angry because for the obvious, oh, I caught you in bed with another guy when I thought we were building something, but also that extra tinge, that extra layer of no, you were closer with him than you were with me. And and she tries to explain it. We both, because that's the thing. I felt uneasy as soon as she started drinking with John, and he says, you're beautiful, and he kind of passes it off, but then it keeps going, and they fight a little bit outside, and but ultimately they connect because they've both lost someone. There's like a sort of there's a harsh honesty between them that I think they both kind of connect with each other for. And we've heard them because we saw John a couple of episodes ago wouldn't have sex with his girlfriend, and then she even says that as much in this one that he would never do that. Like he's never had sex with her. He's always refused or whatever. And then in this, like he finally does this with Camille, and the entire thing's fairly uneasy for a lot of reasons. Like first of all, you've got the age, the vast age difference. Because I didn't know if he was 18. Like, I didn't know if he was in the scene. But then on top of that, he is the suspect of this crime. And even though, like, yeah, I don't believe he did it. Like, I feel like after the conversation he had with Camille, I'm pretty much on her side here of not thinking he did it. But the police are still coming to arrest him. There's just a lot of reasons why this is murky and why this shouldn't be it. But she gives in because he sees her in a way that no one else has seen him. He wants to see the scars. He starts reading them. In fact, I think that's the exact line she says at one point: "Is you're reading me." And he is, and then it obviously quickly turns sexual because at this point she's already got her clothes off, and it escalates from there. But so you understand why those two characters find a bond, even though they really, they shouldn't be. It's inappropriate if you were. That sounds kind of prudish, but I just mean it in a societal sense. There's a lot of reasons why this would be seen as inappropriate, and then you understand why in the scene after this, where it's Richard and Camille, why there's desperation on one side. To a point where she's the most vulnerable she's ever been, and she's trying. Like the acting here is phenomenal. And then from his side, why he's so hurt, why he's so angry, and it's but he does leave the file. He leaves this file about her sister in her car, and she gets to read this, and she goes to see Jackie, and Jackie basically knows and confirms because what he learns is when he goes to talk to the nurse that was fired for questioning this stuff. We find out that, Munchausen syndrome, I believe, or Munchausen by proxy in this case, if I'm pronouncing that right. I might be slightly misremembering the word. I've heard of this before, but it's just one of those things where I'm not familiar with the terms as fluently, if you will. But basically, so it's the idea that someone pretends to be sick. Not even knowingly. I had a quick glance just online. It can just be like a mental illness where you genuinely think you are sick, because you feel like you need the attention, whether you're knowingly making that choice or not. And then by proxy is when you make someone else sick or convince them they're sick so that you can feel like you're looking after them. And something that was established or hinted at in previous episodes was the idea that Adora likes to take care of Amma, and hinted in the past that she obviously took care of Marion. But here's the thing: is up until this point, I don't think we had any reason to suspect that Marianne's death, or at least I kind of speculated last week that is a hint that Camille had something to do with it in some way, that it wasn't natural. And it turns out it wasn't natural. That it seems to be that Adora killed her daughter, and she seems to be doing the same thing to Amma. Even at the start of this episode, Amma's saying, "No, she likes me this way. Has she ever given you the blue?" Because she makes this concoction in this blue glass, this blue jar that she has, and she uses that as the medicine. And you see her like in her element. I think Adora's the happiest I've ever seen her. Is she's like dancing in the kitchen making this concoction, and Amma's sick in bed and throwing up. She's not letting her go out with her friends. And I think Vickery, deep down knows this. I think he helped cover it up in the first place, even if he outright knew or not. Because Adora had the body cremated, but when Willis starts questioning him about it, Vickery gets very defensive and immediately knows that the nurse was fired, which makes me think that whole conviction charge she had was maybe in some part helped by him. And so, I'm not necessarily saying he planted evidence or he did something super corrupt, but at the very least, he was involved in making sure she was discredited. I certainly got that impression. And when he hears from her friends out in the street, oh, where's your third partner in crime? You ride in a pack, and they're like, oh, she's sick, her mum wouldn't let her out. He has a moment where I think he's at least considering that this is happening again, if he ever considered it before. And I think on top of that, I think, Adora's husband, I think he also is in denial. In fact, one of the lines that John has with Camille, when he's talking about how men are supposed to deal with misery and with remorse, is to just live in denial and be strong. I mean, obviously, this show has largely been about how women are expected to act and how they're expected to cope with things, and therefore that's what leads to hiding things, and that's been a lot of the theme of the show. But that's in a way sort of analysing it from the other side, is that men are supposed to appear strong, and it's not meant to affect them, so you bottle things up, and then that's obviously paramount for a lot of problems down the line as well. But he mentions that, and I was thinking of that when it came back to the end when Adora's up with Amma and he's just on his stereo. He's got his fancy headphones on, and it's like Adora almost says to him, "Go listen to a record. Put your headphones on. Don't pay attention to the fact that I'm murdering her daughter." And of course, when Camille sort of learns this, and she runs away from Jackie when she kind of confirms it. And the scene where she phones her editor and she's crying and she can't deal is another fantastic piece of acting. I really appreciated that scene. I loved his concern. I loved him saying, "Get on a plane right now. I will pay for the ticket. You come here now. Come home. I've put you in a rough place," and he's concerned about her. And I think his concern, his fatherly concern, along with his wife, who's clearly concerned about her as well, I think they're like actual proper parents. Like that's what I think. That's what you want out of loving parents, is this actual concern, as opposed to what Adora is. We even get those little flashes of Adora, like, "Oh, I've got another sick baby," and she bites the baby, and it's really creepy. But as Camille's thinking about all this, and we get all these quick flashes, and the other reason why I think, of course, the husband knows what's going on is because we actually end the episode with him, as he's listening to the music, he's having flashbacks of dancing with Amma, who is his daughter, when she was, a few years younger, and like happy. It's like he's remembering this because he feels guilty. Because even if he's not admitted it to himself, I think deep down he knows that something fishy is going on. He knows that there's something here, that this is maybe the end of her, that she is dying now. If I'm going to critique this at all, I feel like I can critique that it does seem like if Amma's been gradually getting sicker, it feels like it's sped up a considerable amount in this episode. And if Adora is just like amped up the dosage or whatever this episode because she wants her to get worse, I feel like it just that feels a little bit abrupt, I guess, is what I'm saying. So I think I'm going to critique it, and is that the condition, in an effort to keep it a secret what was going on, to not make it obvious that the one daughter's getting sick like the previous daughter did. I think we maybe had to speed up artificially, like how quickly she got sick in this episode. So I would critique that a little bit. I mean, she has been out of it a little bit here or there, and maybe arguably the reason why she takes so many drugs is because she's kind of not counteracting what her mum gives her, but it does make her feel better because she does feel otherwise ill. So you could argue that, and that's fair. But it felt a little bit, all of a sudden, everyone seems to know that Adora's doing this, and I'm like, it's weird that this is not really come up too much before now, but there was hints of her liking to take care of people. That was definitely there. But as Camille's thinking about this and she's crying again, the performance is fantastic. Again, there's this vulnerability, but she has these flashes that imply that the woman in white is Adora. And what's funny about this is I remember after, because I think it was episode 2 where we heard about the woman in white from the kid, right? I think in episode 3 at one point, Adora was walking around in her white, like, nightgown, and I had like hey, women in white, and I kind of like dismissed it and said, nah, that's far-fetched, the show's not going down that direction. And funnily enough, it seems to be. Now, I don't know, I think the evidence that suggests that Adora is responsible for the girls' deaths, other than the fact that we find out in this episode that she seemed to know them a lot better than what we'd previously understood, is that John says that his sister's nails were painted when they found her, and she would never do that. That was never her thing. And we know that Adora likes to dress up the bodies, because if you remember the funeral scene for Marianne, she'd put makeup on her, and that really freaked out Camille. So I think that's an element of evidence there, but because I wasn't really sure if it was to take this literal, like what Camille's thinking, like since she's murdered my sister and she's maybe murdering my new sister, did she have something to do with this? Is she the woman in white? Like, is that just Camille? Because she's a killer, she's assuming she's the killer. But the other evidence that we do here does kind of suggest that she probably is in part responsible for those murders. And he actually mentions a tool for pulling out the teeth, which would explain how that was possible. But no, it's interesting. Like I said last week, that it made a lot of sense for a woman to be the murderer, given the themes of the show, and this stands to reason for that. So I can't deny that. And I think over the course of the show, it's also made us really hate her. Like Adora, we've hated her as a character. So I think, this all pans out. Now, there could be some other swerves in the final episode. We got one more left, obviously, next week to get the finale. But I feel like there's enough truth in here that she is definitely culpable. She is definitely a villain throughout. And the idea that Camille was hated not because of the reasons that she was given, an episode or two ago. It was actually more to do because she did not let her fix her. She did not let her heal her, and be caring to her, and she always resented her for that. Is a very interesting idea. That Camille, even at one point when she's talking to John, says maybe I should have let her fix me, and it turns out no. Like if you'd done that, like you might have ended up dead, just like your sister did, and that's why she favoured the other sister, because she let her away with all this crap, and not that she knew it was happening. Although I get the impression Amma might, in some level, understand that she's getting sick, and her mother's causing it. Like it feels like she might. And there's a lot of little, obviously, filmmaking details in this one I like. Like the episode started with Amy Adams looking at the dollhouse and looking in through the window, and I think a big part of this show is the idea that she's been thrust back into her hometown, and it's reopening all these old wounds. There's something great about her looking down at this house, and as if she's looking into the memories of the house and everything that happened in the house. So just it's kind of like reflective and thematic, and a symbol for what the entire show is in a lot of ways. And I think that's kind of cool. Just to go back to the scene with her with the editor on the phone, is I think this is a big turning point for her as a character. Is this moment here when she decides not to go home? She says, no, I'm not going on a plane. I'm not letting her do this again, or whatever the exact line was. It was something to that effect. I have to deal with this. And then she's driving home to confront her mother, and possibly save Amma, because she couldn't save her sister, she couldn't save Alice at the rehab center. She's going to save Amma, but she makes this choice. This is the arc. This is the third act hero's choice of, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to be proactive and try and stop this. And I think that's a big deal for a character. It's a big deal for a character in terms of the choice, but just in terms of, like, think about thematically, the story of the show is that her mother has always mistreated her, and she is just very passive aggressive about it. She's never confronted her necessarily directly about how she treats her. Whereas here she is going to confront her finally, but it's a TV show, so it's amped up to 11 because she's actually confronting her about being a murderer as well. It's just the two things have now combined, because the murderer is the mother who does treat her this way, because that's the thing. Like, whenever Adora's, remember back to the dressing room scene a couple of episodes ago, when she basically says, "Oh, all this is ruined out of spite. You ruined yourself. You did all this." And if you remember at the end of that conversation, Camille said, "It's over now." And then she said, of course, that horrible line where Adora said, "It doesn't matter, you're ruined." But that idea that Adora, because she's not the one who got to fix her, if she is indeed fixed, and that's debatable, that is the I think that's like a big deal here thematically. That's a big deal here for Adora and what she's actually been doing. That she cares so much about making them sick so that she can feel like she's the one taking care of them. And the idea that she didn't help take care of Camille, and she resents her also for that. So no, it's fascinating stuff. So this was a pretty solid episode. All in. Once it was sort of wrapping up, of course the cliffhanger was kind of painful, but we're rushing here to the end line. It'll be interesting to see how Vickery and Willis come back into it now, and the revelation that the mother of the town, Adora, like how do we how's the reaction to her being this? How many people really have an inkling of knowledge about it? Is it just the ones we've seen? Is it just Jackie and so on? Um, does Vickery have to make a tough choice here? Like obviously he cares for her, but does he have to make a tough choice if he is not indeed just outright complicit with what's been going on? But yeah, no, it's interesting. And like Vickery says, actually no, it wasn't Vickery. It was Willis who said to Camille, "It's always the family." Right, and he's saying that about John because he's angry, and he's like, "No, this is going to be right." Um, but it actually applies to Adora with Marianne and Noama, and and if she is the one who was killing those other girls, I'd be fascinated to see what we get in terms of a motivation, in terms of like a trigger for that, like why she after all that time decided to start seeking out other potential victims, and why she did it specifically this way, and so on, like because it sounds like she knew the girls well enough, she understood them. I think the idea that they were friends with Amma before is also is actually interesting in a different light now, because it's almost like she groomed her friends to be murdered, and then like Amma had separated from them, and then she so it's interesting. It's almost like she was trying to avoid making her own daughter sick and just hurting other people instead. But we'll see how that pans out. We'll see. But she's a monster, and she was a monster anyway for being a terrible mother. But and just being a terrible human being. But now she's a literal monster, and that she's actually a killer. So no, and also made me think of The Sixth Sense just a little bit. I won't say why if you haven't seen The Sixth Sense, but it just made me think of it. So there you go. That is episode 6 of Sharp Objects. It was very good. And I've basically revolved the entire thing around like 3 of the scenes, because that's where all the real juicy meat came from. But plenty of other small details to get into. So please do comment below about your thoughts on the various things. But no, like I say, the vulnerability that Amy Adams brought to the scene with Willis after being caught in bed with John Keane, and then the scene on the phone with the editor, which I do think is the turning point for her character, which makes sense to come at the end of the penultimate episode, because she goes into the final episode with the mission to achieve the goal, to beat the villain, if you will, to put it in like simple good versus evil storytelling terminology. She's going to go after the villain in the final episode. She's a hero. She's a flawed hero, certainly very flawed, but for the first time, she's going to confront what the actual problem is head on, and that's something to root for. So that's root for in the final episode. So yeah, that is Sharp Objects episode 6. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Like and subscribe and all that stuff. Get me on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to get me on Twitter specifically, go to @wibble89. But of course, if you want to support the channel and almost cancelled and everything we do here, head over to patreon.com/mailedfuzztv, and you can do that over there. For as little as $1 a month, and feel warm and fuzzy inside for supporting. But that is us. So thank you very much once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?